Welcome to the Volunteer Youth Worker Podcast. Youth ministries rise and fall on the volunteers, so we are here to encourage and equip you. Join the conversation as we tackle the practical questions you are asking so you can help the next generation know Jesus.
Hey Sid, I've got this question for you about students experiencing complicated family dynamics. Do you have, you can't actually say the specifics, but when I say students in your ministry that are experiencing some complicated family dynamics, does anything come to mind?
Yeah, it's called my son. So his name is Peyton. Experienced some very complicated family dynamics, dude. And if you want to hear about it, just get the podcast that we put out for Father's Day with In Doubt. Then you'll hear the whole story. It's great.
Oh, that is true. We could definitely do that. You didn't change his name. You know, sometimes you might think to protect the anonymity of people you're calling out.
We're all past that. Hey, you know what, Jared? Here's what's fascinating about the question. I'm really thankful for it. Obviously, you know, right now we're at camp, and at camp, when you create a really safe environment for kids, something that we always say is the more effective we are at youth ministry, the messier it becomes. Because when kids start feeling safe, they're going to start sharing. And so in all honesty, any camp workers out there right now, you know that you're having, by Tuesday or Wednesday, either with staff or with campers, you're probably dealing with 5 or 6 of these types of experiences on like the daily, and from just radically varied environments. So just to, again, set context real quick, Jared, like just this summer alone, we've had multiple incidents reports that we fill out based upon a kid's disclosure to us about their family. We've already called our legal advisors, counselors, social services on more than one occasion to get information on how we should process it. And then here's what we want to talk about today. In fact, just today I sat down with one of our leaders on, hey, what is your expectation, or understanding of success when it comes to working with these kids within this environment as well? And I think, Jared, like that's a really important conversation to have. Maybe it's not even so much, what are our measurements for success, but who are we supposed to be in this type of a journey with these kids? And I want to be really careful to say this isn't just about the camp context or environment. So if it's camp, one of the things we're thinking about is, I only get this kid for a week. So what do I do within this week? What do I need to accomplish within this week? What I want to say is there's principles for whether you're at camp or away from camp within your local church context where you have a long-term relationship with a child, maybe even know the family, might even have a relationship with the family, that I think we need to really think about as volunteer youth workers. And Jer, I do want to say to point leaders as well, you have a real responsibility to support, protect, come alongside your volunteers, and really clarify what the outcomes are you're looking for in this type of a situation with that leader. In fact, Jer, we actually carry that burden of responsibility for our leaders to help set those parameters, if you will.
Yeah, well, it makes me think that we should actually, if you're comfortable, can we send out to people, maybe we could put a link in the show notes, to access like what's a sample incident report look like? So, you're in your small group and a student opens up about something and you're like, well, should there be a record of this somewhere? Check with your point leader, and then, we'll link something that you could use just as a starting point for that.
Yeah, Jared, let me just quickly speak to that because maybe some of us won't get there. Point leaders, if you're listening to this, volunteer, this is something you should give to your point leader. Basically, all we did was create a Google Doc file, that you hit the link and then you can keep filling out more and more of these responses. And all we're looking for is a record. So basic, like who's involved, time, what was disclosed, how you responded, what next steps are, like really basic stuff. And one of the things we say to our leaders as well is we say, hey, this isn't like a legal document or like an official, in that sense. You don't have to get it right. This is just us being able to track with what's happening with students. When we create a document like that, it helps protect our leaders as well in terms of, hey, this is a right response to this type of situation that at some point down the road, somebody might want to know. And so there's a high level of professionalism that is attached to that. It's protective, and it also allows us to see patterns with kids so we know better how to respond when we see something popping up over and over again. So it's just smart. And we try to remove some of like the weight of it. Oh, I have to fill out an incident report. This must be so serious. Am I in trouble? Will I be held accountable? Like, and we're just saying, nah, this is just common. This is just what we do. It's just about helping create records, keep awareness of what's taking place, allow us to support better, do good accountability. And so for us, it's just become common practice. We don't go a week where we're just not pounding out incident reports. We make them really easy to access, and away we go.
Yep. So that's available for folks. And then you should have in your church or ministry, obviously you said you also referenced like, hey, we've reached out to a professional. So lawyer, school guidance counselor, mental health professional, somebody that just knows based on disclosure what should happen next, police officer, that kind of stuff. That's great. That's important information to know so that you can ask an expert, hey, I don't know what should happen in this instance. Somebody, in our ministry, I was in my small group, a kid mentioned this, like, hey, they haven't had food in their house for the last,
Totally.
week. What are we supposed to do in that instance?
Totally.
This allows you to have a record of, hey, we've heard of that story. What are we meant to do with that story? This is a complicated family dynamic.
Yeah, and we have like a registered counselor that is, what do I want to say, licensed by the government, that we, as friend of the camp, and we actually call her. So two things happen when we call her. We get good information. She understands our context, where we are. We get good information, and we're now legally covered because she goes, Kev, mark this. This is the information I'm giving you, and so this is how you can respond. So I know, like Jonathan in his podcast, he referenced this already. I just think it's really great. Someone in the police services can be really helpful. Professional counselor can be really helpful. Someone who's a part of like social services or a government organization that's licensed to respond properly can be really helpful for us. We know that those people aren't always easy to find, so we got to do some work for it. So point leaders, it's really helpful if you can do the work and have those people kind of on speed dial. For our people, Jared, we let them know, hey, I'm just going to take 2 minutes of your time, want to run a scenario by you and just get your best feedback. And that's just been huge for us. So we always know what our next step is when it comes to these types of situations. And so that really protects our staff, our volunteer leaders, who are pretty young, Jared. Like we're talking grade 11, grade 12 students, college, and we can just say, hey, thanks so much. You've experienced something. Come talk to us. Great. Let's write that down, et cetera, et cetera. Jared, I want to say something about the culture we've created that I think is really important. Again, we've tried to take the weight out of this. So we're having walk-by conversations on this stuff constantly. So in our training, we say, hey, we are going to over-document. We're just committed to that because it's safe, it's wise, it's helpful. So I'll be like walking down a sidewalk. One of my staff will come by and just go, hey, Sid, I just had a conversation with a kid. They just disclosed this and this and this from home. I'm like, yeah, can you just fill out the incident report? We'll take a look at it and get back to you. So it's just like, oh yeah, that's just what we do. Great, sit down, bam, bam, bam. It takes them 5 minutes and away we go. So we don't want to take away from our leaders being relationally present with kids. We don't want them to become something more than what they should. And so all of these help us both protect children and protect our leaders and allow us to be faithful to what we're called to be faithful for. And Jared, we'll probably talk about this in a minute, but we do a lot of work on reminding our cabin leaders what God's call on their lives is for these kids, but what it's not.
Yeah.
And I think we have to be just as clear in terms of what's not as what is.
And that's where we want to go. That is the heart of the question is, okay, what are we actually meant to do and be responsible for? What we just want to clarify really here up front is that when stuff shows up in your ministry, in your relationship with students, as you're connecting with them, let's make sure that we're keeping track, that we're checking with the right experts. All that stuff is absolutely critical. And maybe just one other note, because you and I both have grown up in the Marv Penner School of Youth Ministry. And so I am absolutely thinking about Marv in this moment, because when a student is disclosing or sharing things, one of the questions they might have is, hey, can you keep a secret? Or, hey, hold on to this information. Like, don't tell anybody, but this is what's going on. And youth workers, just so you know, you can never promise to keep a secret for a student.
So, Jared,
you want to jump in and say?
Yeah, we just had an incident. So in our training, youth ministry, volunteer, you have to have some type of training experience or preparation or onboarding process to be working in your youth ministry. I know many don't. I'm just saying I think we need to get there. The issues that we're being asked to deal with are way too complex. So we could talk about that. Today's not the day for that. But here's the point. One of the things we say to our leaders is we say, hey, just under no circumstances can you ever make a promise to keep a child, to keep a secret. So, and then of course the feedback we get is, well, if I don't make that promise, they won't tell me. And we go, that's okay. You can't tell them that. You are not safe for that child, and you're not safe for our organization if you do that. We're going to trust the Lord that if that child chooses not to disclose, that he'll provide an opportunity where that can be done in a very healthy manner or environment. So we have to entrust God to that. But Jer, I have yet to have a child in our ministry where they've said, hey, I want to tell you something only if you promise to keep a secret. Where our leaders have gone, hey, sorry, I can't promise to keep a secret. What I can promise to do is that I will only let people know who love you and will be helpful for you, and we will keep it confidential. So that's what we're committed to doing. And I have yet to have a leader come back to me and say, well, the student said, I'm not telling you then. That just hasn't happened in our environment yet.
Yeah. Another thing Marv has often said is that when you explain that, say what you just said, but you can also say, I also won't tell anybody unless I tell you first that I'm going to tell them. And so that's fine too. That makes sense. And so they reveal something. Hey, I now need to bring this to somebody that's important. I'm going to talk with a police officer. I'm going to talk with, our youth pastor. I'm going to get, those kinds of things. The police officer, that's a jumping to the big one.
Yeah. We jumped all the way. We just went up real fast.
Yeah. But in some sense, it's like, hey,
listen, we're there.
Yeah. I've had a student reach out and I said, hey, stay on the line with me, but just so you know, we are going to need to call somebody to come and make sure that you're safe. And so there's the possibilities for that kind of stuff. The point is no secrets.
No secrets. And let me I want to say this. We had a situation just the other week where where one of our students revealed a threat from someone close to her, and it was a real threat for her and her family. And so another one of our staff disclosed what took place to us. That staff member started carrying a fair amount of guilt and shame. She actually didn't want to disclose for us because she thought she was breaking the trust of that individual. And so we just said to the staff member, we said, hey, just as a reminder, you had no choice but to tell us. When you came on staff, you made that commitment. You had no choice but to tell us. You did what was the most loving for all parties in this experience, and we're proud of you. You're one of us. And then when we talked with the individual that we were dealing with, we said, hey, listen, this person did not want to out you in any way, shape, or form, but they had actually, not only legal obligation, but by being a part of our community, they had no choice. So we just want you to know they love you, they care for you. This is why they did it, and they have to let us know. And here are the steps we're going to take in light of that. So again, we just make you need to make those things really clear from the very outset with your ministry and your organization.
Yeah. Okay, let's answer the question that we came here to answer,
right on.
which
20
is
minutes in.
Yeah. Not quite, but the point is, when you are a volunteer youth worker, you guys listening, you are, we would say, Sid, I think you and I would say, and as youth worker community, you're a youth worker when you want the next generation to follow Jesus. You've got students in your group, in your small group, in your ministry, in your church, in your cabin, whatever it is. You want them to follow Jesus. Naturally, some of these complicated family dynamics show up and come up. What are we actually responsible for around those things? Because I think as youth workers, we think, okay, am I meant to solve this problem? Am I meant to fix the family relationship? This obviously is causing significant hurt and difficulty in the life of the student that is with me. What am I actually meant to shoulder and to carry in terms of a responsibility in light of what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I'll try to be pretty to the point here, Jer. So we know that there's lots more that we could process on the things, but let me see if we can get to the point that could be helpful. Okay, so first of all, our responsibility is to not fix a child or their family. And that's hard for me because I am a fixer, so I'm always looking for the answer, and I want to be really clear that's actually not our responsibility. What would I say our responsibility is? Our responsibility is to be relationally present with that individual. And here's what I think. When I'm thinking about this, there's a couple of things I'm thinking about. Number one, I want to be relationally present with them in terms of the issue they're dealing with. So I care for them. I'm listening. I'm present, I understand. But I'm actually committed to being relationally present for that person beyond just this incident or this instance. And I think that's actually helpful for us, Jer. So for instance, I don't want to, every time I see this kid, be asking them only about this issue or processing just this issue. I want to actually move on, like be a part of their life. And this is a part of their life I'm a part of. If we were a professional counselor or a therapist or a social worker, we would deal with this issue and we would stay present to solve this issue. That's not our responsibility, and we can't do it. By the way, these issues are far too complex for us. They just really are. They're deep. They're all those sorts of things. So we are being relationally present. We're loving. We're listening. We're pointing to the truth that God would have for them. And then we're accessing or we're helping bridge to other people or resources that can be helpful for this instant for this child. But we really, really have to remove the pressure to fix. You just can't. And in fact, what I would say, Jer, and we would talk with some of our friends who are therapists and counselors, if we move to fix, we can do significantly more damage than not being involved at all, actually. And so we need to be really, really aware of our limitations in that sense. And again, it's not easy for us, but it's important. Jared, there's something else I want to speak to this as well. Not only do we have to be careful in terms of not positioning ourselves as a fixer, but we actually have to be really careful in terms of how we emotionally position ourselves with a young person in this space as well. And this is a real tension for us. I'm going to acknowledge that. So the scriptures tell us that we should mourn with those who mourn and rejoice with those who rejoice. So we are not emotionally disconnected. But we do need to emotionally differentiate to some degree. And what I mean by that is while we bear with them and while we bear the burdens of one another, we're not owning them. So we have to be able to give those up to the Lord, and we have to create some type of emotional clarity or distance from the experience so that we can actually be helpful. So sometimes when we're so enmeshed emotionally in the issue, we can actually perpetuate the problem. And actually, because we're so invested emotionally that we don't have perspective to actually be helpfully present, if you will. So I think that's one thing we have to be really careful of. The other thing we should be careful of is we should evaluate ourselves in terms of why are we wanting to be present with this person in their pain? And so I'm going to go a little deep on this one, but I want to be careful. For some of us, we desperately want to be needed. And so sometimes we'll actually position ourselves to find the most hurting ones so that we like the feeling of being a functional savior. And I just want to say you're not helpful if you're doing that. There's probably something that we all need, like we should all get some help in that area, but we should be really careful about that. Again, we should want to care, we should want to be present, but we should just be a little bit aware of our own motives for being in these types of situations, especially if they're the only situations we ever find ourselves in. We might just want to process that a little bit because, again, that would limit our ability to truly be helpful when we need someone to be in crisis in order to feel needed. And it's not healthy for us. One of the things I just talked with one of our leaders today, I just said, hey, you need to balance time with kids who are in crisis and struggling with time with kids who are really healthy and just need like affirmation and joy that are life-giving for you. And you actually need to look to balance on both of those, especially as a volunteer youth worker. I think that's really important.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes me think that, I don't know if this is all, counselors or mental health professionals or whatnot, but folks that are often walking in pretty deep to those pains are themselves receiving regular counseling. They have to have somebody that helps process all the stuff that they've held on to. And I think sometimes for us as youth workers, if we're not careful, we can miss the fact that there are lots of skills to that kind of work. If you want to actually do that type of deep work, a journey into somebody's pain with them, that requires more training than you likely got when you signed on to be a volunteer. And then the other thing you just said, I think that was so helpful to spend time with kids. I think sometimes we are perhaps drawn, like you said, to the students that are their pain and their needs are so clear or present, like they're so upfront, and then we end up as a part of that missing the students, and we might even cognitively think like, well, they don't need me, they've got a good family, or they've got Sid Coop is his dad, he doesn't need another a person to invest into his life. But the truth is that those students also desperately need another thoughtful Christian in their life that is encouraging them to follow Jesus. And so that's the call and that's the role. Let's be careful to to subdivide it. I would say though, and just one caveat, like we're not meant to fix their problems. That's not what we're called to do. But if there is a practical need, feel free to encourage your church or your ministry to help meet it for a student. Yeah. So you got a hungry kid. Like you may not be able to get their fridge filled at their house on a regular basis, but you possibly could, bring lunch for them or supper for them, to youth nights. Like that's great. That's a wonderful thing to do.
And we're not advocating that, hey, you need to keep yourself safe and don't sacrifice for others and don't give yourself to others. That's not what we're advocating for. What we're advocating for is right size expectations, understand your role, and also know that God's probably called you to more than just one child and one type of child, probably, if you're a volunteer in a youth ministry. And if you do feel called specifically to one child or one type of child, then maybe you need to think about that as a vocation and get the type of training where you could be professionally helpful in that space as well.
This maybe has brought up lots of questions, and so obviously we put contact in the show notes. You can reach out. Any last thoughts, Sid?
Yeah, no, I mean, again, it's what we always say, Jer, like leaders, what you do just matters so much. And you're not alone. Like, of course, the Lord is with you, the Spirit is with you, but He's designed it that He would be with us through the body of Christ. And so He gives different people skills, gifts, and abilities. And it's really important to as much as we can, to reach out to the body and do this as community. And I just think that's a really a good and right next step to take when we're thinking about what we're involved in here.
On that note, hey, we'll see you next time for another conversation here, but really appreciate with the work that you're doing. Honestly, it makes an eternal difference. And when you're journeying with difficult situations and students through hard things, know that you're positioned perfectly and God's got you. So thanks for being there.
Love it.